fellow Trek Chatters, I'm Pit Trekkie, and welcome to another episode of Pittsburgh's Trek Chat. Boy, this summer vacation has certainly been quite eventful for Star Trek fans in the Star Trek community. I'm actually starting to call it the summer of Star Trek. We've had some amazing news about Star Trek Discovery for Season 2 and the future of Star Trek starting back in June. So what I want to do with this episode is just kind of talk about everything, kind of put it into one big episode, talk about some of the news that's going on and what are some of my thoughts on it. Alright, so the first little bit of news that came out was, and this was from CBS on June 14th, the Hollywood Reporter had reported that Gretchen Berg and Aaron Harbitz, some of the writers for Star Trek Discovery, were fired. According to the CBS statement that I saw through the Hollywood Reporter, it says, quote, "We've made some producer changes at Star Trek Discovery. The series continues under the creative vision and leadership of executive producer and co-creator Alex Kurtzman. Discovery remains on course for Season 2 in 2019 with new and continuing stories that build on its successful premiere season," end quote. Alright, so CBS didn't really get into exactly what happened, but the Hollywood Reporter's report did. Heard different rumors. Basically what they heard was that Gretchen Berg and Aaron Harbitz were being verbally aggressive to the entire writing staff. Apparently there was a report that Aaron Harbitz actually leaned over the desk and got in the face of one of the writers and started screaming and yelling, and I guess he was swearing. The word that what I saw in quotes was imposing remarks. And apparently the writing staff had finally had enough, and they said that they were either going to quit or they were going to make a report. So they ended up making a report, and that led to Berg and Harbitz being let go from the series. My thoughts on this. One thing that I've noticed about Star Trek Discovery is it's not shy in telling people that it's being very progressive. Star Trek's always talked about different issues, the Vietnam War, drugs, racial interactions, relations, things of that nature. And Discovery continues to do that. They've included an African-American female as the lead. They've got the gay character in a positive relationship on the show. They've talked about, I guess you can argue they kind of talked a little bit about animal cruelty with the tardigrade. So here are my thoughts. Discovery seems to always be like, hey, look what we're doing. We put in the African-American female. We made sure that that was done. We made sure we put the gay couple in. We made sure we did that. We made sure that we did these special effects and everything that are really good. Please get us an Emmy. You know, they just keep kind of throwing it to everybody's face that they're this super progressive, and this show is just the most amazing thing. So what this thing about Berg and Harbitz does is it irritates the hell out of me, because you've got people that were going out there saying how progressive and tolerant that they are people, and they couldn't even tolerate their own damn writing team to the point that they bullied and verbally abused them. That's a bunch of bullshit, in my opinion. And you know what I say to Gretchen Berg and Aaron Harbitz? Goodbye. I hope the turbolift doors didn't hit you in your asses on the way out. Good riddance. You need to practice what you preach. So I'm not going to miss them one way or the other. The other little bit of news from that report is one of the executive producers, Akiva Goldsman, will also not be returning. He was an assistant to Alex Kurtzman, and according to the report it said, quote, "a management style and personality that clashed with writing staff," end quote. So who knows what was going on with him? Was he doing the same thing as Berg and Harbitz? Who knows? So here's what it means basically for Discovery Season 2, in my opinion. Well, it's going to leave Alex Kurtzman as the only showrunner as of Episode 6. He's going to be like the main person leading the show. And apparently Discovery's production is not going to be affected by this. And so my thoughts on this, it kind of reminds me of the Next Generation's rocky beginning with Seasons 1 through Season 3, where you had a bunch of writers coming and going. I guess there were a lot of clashes with the writing staff and Gene Roddenberry and his lawyer Leonard Maizlich. I guess they were making script writing changes, and Leonard Maizlich, the lawyer, was even changing things. And it led to just kind of an outdoor policy, everybody just kind of rotating in and out. And it seemed to finally stabilize around the 3rd season. Okay, so if it was able to stabilize for the next generation, I believe that it'll be like that for Discovery as well. It'll just get back on its feet and it'll just rebuild itself. If you're very curious to know about the first couple years on Star Trek The Next Generation, I highly recommend that you rent out the DVD, William Shatner Presents Chaos on the Bridge. It's an actual documentary that William Shatner filmed, talking with those people who were in the writing staff or on the production team during those first couple years of TNG. And they give you behind the scenes talk about what actually happened. It's a very excellent DVD. I highly suggest that you rent it out. Again, it's called William Shatner Presents Chaos on the Bridge. 5 days later, on June 19th, CBS came out with another announcement. Alex Kurtzman ended up signing a 5-year deal with CBS to develop new Star Trek projects. According to the details, it will last until 2023, and he will develop new Star Trek projects in addition to Discovery. Several of the projects listed, they are talking about a Starfleet Academy series that will be led or run by the creators of the Dynasty reboot on the CW, and their names are Stephanie Savage and John Schwartz. Another show that was discussed was a limited series, but plot details were being kept quiet and are still being kept quiet at this time. Another rumor that seems to be confirmed at this point is there is a Wrath of Khan mini-series or series being developed by Nicholas Meyer. It'll show what happened to Khan and his crew during the 15 years they were marooned on Ceti Alpha 5. They're also talking about a Patrick Stewart series. We're actually going to get to that in just a few minutes. All right. They were talking about an animated series, but there were no details involved. So I kind of want to give my thoughts on some of these show ideas. So the Star Trek Academy thing, they've been talking about Star Trek 90210 since I was watching Deep Space Nine and Voyager as a teenager in the 90s, growing up. And I've never been too keen on the idea of an Academy show. I'm afraid they might, I don't want to say dumb it down, but I'm not so sure if it would be extremely as thought-provoking. I don't know. I mean, I could be completely off the mark, but I just don't want Star Trek to become a major soap opera. Granted, in the original series, there was a lot of soap opera stuff going on with Kirk falling in love with every woman alien of the week. Okay, so I mean, they had a lot of that, but they made it work. It could be an interesting premise if they do have these young 20-somethings entering Starfleet Academy, and they can talk about some real-life issues in that. Talk about interactions with races that maybe you haven't had a lot of exposure to, different thoughts and opinions, political views. A lot of different things that are going on in today's day and age could be tackled in that kind of show, as long as they just don't lose that heart and the adventure for what Star Trek has always been. The limited series with plot details, I'm kind of wondering if that's the Captain Picard series that just got announced less than a week ago at Star Trek Las Vegas. I'm going to hold on to that for a minute. We're going to get to that part. The Wrath of Khan series, a lot of people were really against this one. They don't see a point to it. I think it would actually be really, really cool to see. I've always been curious about what's happened to Khan and his followers during that 15-year span between Space Seed and the Wrath of Khan. However, there was already Greg Cox, an author of several Star Trek novels, did a series in the early 2000s about the rise and fall of Khan and Ian Singh. And the third book in that trilogy was Terrain in Hell, and that focused on the time on Ceti Alpha 5. I've read the book twice, and I plan on reading it again a couple more times. It is a non-stop page-turner. You will love that book. If you have not read it, please go get it. It's called Terrain in Hell by Greg Cox. And it's the third part of that Rise and Fall of Khan and Ian Singh trilogy from the early 2000s. An animated series? I don't see why not if it's done properly. The animated series from the 70s is wonderful. It's written in very well. Who knows what kind of creatures and situations they could create on a new animated series. If it has the quality of Star Wars, the Clone Wars, the Star Wars Rebels, I'll be sucked right into it. And I'm sure a lot of other people will as well. So I don't mind that. So then we go on to Friday, July 20th at San Diego Comic-Con. There was a panel for Star Trek Discovery Season 2. They showed a trailer for the new season. It was also announced that Season 2 of Discovery will premiere in January of 2019. But before that happens, there's going to be what are called mini-sodes, 4 of them, that are going to be released in December, called Star Trek Short Treks. And it deals with little other characters in the Discovery on the ship, or in their kind of the people that have been on the show. One of the mini-sodes is going to focus on Harry Mudd, so who knows what that's going to be. I'm sure there'll be a little bit of comical relief, but a lot of darkness to it as well. There's also, they're talking about, I believe it's a new character that's going to find himself on a deserted ship, so that one's piqued my curiosity. They're also going to do an episode that talks about Saru's backstory, so that'll be cool to kind of learn a little bit more about him. The Kelpian species is very interesting, so kind of learning a little bit more about them I think will be really cool. There's also going to be an episode about Tilly. Now, I've said on this show before, I love Tilly. Tilly is actually the one Star Trek character out of any Star Trek series I've ever watched that I can actually feel like I relate to. I tend to be socially awkward at times. I get very nervous in big crowds and social environments, but I'm also very easy and outgoing, and I try my best to interact with people and have positive conversations and things like that, but I always feel awkward and different, and that's kind of what I see with Tilly. But I also know that I tend to be very goal-driven, especially when I was in high school and in college and with my career. I've tried to set a lot of goals for myself and try really hard to achieve them, and I see that in Tilly as well. So I'm really looking forward, out of the 4 of them, I'm looking forward to that one more than any of them. So some of the things that were seen in the Season 2 trailer for Discovery and some of the cast comments, we find out that Captain Pike is going to be taking command of the Discovery. At one point we see him in an Enterprise uniform, and then we see him in a Discovery uniform. So that'll be interesting to see why that ends up having to be. One of the big storylines that seems to be happening is they were talking about something about 7 red bursts that are about 30,000 light years across. So that's probably going to be a big plot element in Season 2, and apparently Spock is tied to them in some way. So who knows what they are, if they're just some sort of natural space phenomena, or if it's some sort of intelligence. And every time I think about these red bursts, I keep thinking back to Spock and his kind of link with V'ger in Star Trek The Motion Picture. Is this kind of like where his ability to do that kind of starts? You never know. Who knows? We might be chock full of surprises when they come back. We also know that L'Rell is going to be Klingon Chancellor. Tilly is going to continue her ambition to set goals and eventually become a commanding officer. Again, that goes back to what I just said about her. She's very goal-driven, and I really believe she's going to achieve a lot of her goals as the series goes on. I've described her in the past as this series' Sarah Connor character, who starts out as meek and timid, but is going to grow into somebody who's very strong. Mark my words, that's going to happen. We're also going to see an episode where Saru goes back to his home planet, and it's going to be an interesting episode because apparently we're going to try to figure out who's the prey on the planet and who's the predator. So there might be an interesting spin on that. It was also reported Spock is definitely going to be seen in Season 2. And also, number 1 has been cast. Rebecca Romijn is going to play that role. She seems very excited about it. She tweeted about it. She said she's very glad to be part of the Star Trek universe and phenomenon now. So it'll be really cool to see how she portrays number 1 compared to Majel Barrett in The Cage. Now we're going to go on to the discussion about Captain Picard and his new series. So during the 4th day of Star Trek Las Vegas this year in 2018, Alex Kurtzman was on stage talking about Star Trek, and he surprised the audience by saying, "What's the next Star Trek series going to be?" And then he actually had Sir Patrick Stewart come out, and he talked a little bit about how he thought in 2002, after Nemesis, he was done playing Picard, that he was going to put that part of his life past him. And they apparently, CBS had approached him about reprising Captain Picard, and he was going to tell them no. But they had some discussions, and it changed his mind, and he said that Captain Picard is definitely going to be coming back. To thunderous applause by the audience that was so touching and moving to him that he was actually seen on camera wiping tears out of his eyes. So I think this is very important to him. What he did say to the audience is that Picard is going to be a little bit different. So here's the quote from Sir Patrick Stewart. He said, quote, "He may not, and I stress may not, be a captain anymore. He may not be the Jean-Luc that you recognize and know so well. It may be a very different individual. someone who has been changed by his experiences. 20 years will have passed, which is more or less exactly the time between the very last movie, Nemesis, and today. It will be, I promise you, I guarantee it, something very, very different. It will come to you with the same passion and determination and love for the material and love of our followers and our fans, exactly as we had it before, end quote. So we're going to get a very different type of Captain Picard in this series. Now what I'm wondering is this going to be an actual TV series with 13, 15 episodes per season, or is this going to be like a short, like 10 episode mini TV series, or is it going to be an actual like mini series? It'll be very interesting to see how that goes. The only real plot detail we have, besides Captain Picard returning, is that it takes place 20 years after Nemesis. Okay, so I guess we'll find out what happens, and if there's any breaking news on that, I will bring it here on Pittsburgh's Trek Chat. We did find out also that CBS All Access wants to start rolling out more Star Trek products. Apparently, basically what they want to do is they want to make sure Star Trek is on CBS All Access all year round. So even when Discovery's on hiatus between seasons, there will be something else the Trek fans can watch. So I'm really excited about it. Captain Picard's my favorite captain of all the captains. Next Generation has always been my favorite Star Trek series. It's the Star Trek series that brought me into Star Trek and made me a fan for almost 31 years now. So seeing Captain Picard coming back, you know, is really touching, and it hits me right here. I cannot wait to see him come back. All right, so conclusions. Basically, there's a segment on this show that I haven't done in a while called Open Channel, and usually what I do is I post a question at the end of each one of my episodes that I'd like to have people respond to in the comment section here on YouTube, so that I can respond back, and then I can bring that up on the next episode of Pittsburgh's Trek Chat. So please, if you watch this episode and you like it, please click the like button. Please share it to other people if you feel that they would be interested in what I have to say. Please comment below. You can follow the show here. You can just type in Pittsburgh's Trek Chat on YouTube. It'll take you directly to my page. You can watch my 14 other episodes that I've done, plus you can watch the 3 minisodes that I've done called Code 47 Transmissions, which focus on breaking news in the Star Trek universe. You can also follow on Facebook. You just go to www.facebook.com. You can type in /PGH Trek Chat. It should take you directly there. But in the search engine, you can also type Pittsburgh's Trek Chat. You can also follow on Twitter at PGH Trek Chat. Hoping to see some comments from you and hoping to bring Open Channel back to next week's episode. But until the next episode, may yins live long and prosper.